From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano, Kyle Goon is joining us here on today's episode, and Jonas Shaffer is going to do his Chris Collinsworth slide on into the podcast today. We're going to be doing a quick preview of the storylines heading into the AFC Championship game between the Ravens and the Chiefs. We're going to be making as many Taylor Swift song references as humanly possible. All that and more coming up. But first, quick word from our sponsors.
If you have an appetite for saving money, then you should get the Rofo Rewards app from Royal Farms. Use the Rofo Rewards app to place mobile orders for pickup or delivery and earn royalty points to redeem for free stuff. And right now, new Rofo Rewards members will get a free any-size coffee for signing up. You can download the Rofo Rewards app at the Apple App Store or Google Play today. You'll find it's a very appealing app to have. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament is February 26th through March 3rd at CFG Bank Arena. Baltimore is bringing the hoops, the culture, and the energy. So grab your tickets now and book your hotel at baltimore.org/CIAA.
All right, Kyle, thanks so much for joining us. We had to book this in advance with your secretary, with your calendar person. I'm glad that we were able to get you, though. It took quite a while.
Yeah, as you know, if I'm on your podcast, you hit the big time. So second appearance also. Wow.
That's true.
Congrats to you.
Do we need to start worrying about getting a jacket for people?
Yeah, I think so. Also, I got to ask, because Jonas and I were having this conversation. Obviously, we know Lamar Jackson's profanity-filled rant at halftime to the Ravens locker room is partly what fueled a strong second half against the Texans in the AFC divisional round. Kyle, what's your favorite halftime pump-up speech? Is it Miracle? Jonas threw out a speech from Julius Caesar, the William Shakespeare play.
Yeah.
Cry Havoc and what is it?
Let's Slip the Dogs of War.
There we go.
That was just a nod to your thespian heritage.
Yes. Do you have one, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to go very basic here and say any given Sunday, we fight for that inch. I mean, that one's always good. That one always gives me chills. Al Pacino, never been better.
Never been better.
Never been better.
Have you seen Heat? That's a pretty darn good one. Great LA movie. One I will say, though, Braveheart. When I was in high school, one kid would always get up and give the Braveheart speech at halftime. And I got to be that kid a couple times.
That's more pregame, though, isn't it? In full context.
True. No, true. That is true. But we used it for halftime. And one time I finished the speech as the high school, my high school, the kick returner was taking the second half kickoff the distance for a touchdown. It was remarkable.
So you're saying it's aged about as well as Mel Gibson has?
All right. Well, we're going to get canceled. This is why we can't go live, Jonas. We are going to be discussing the biggest storylines heading into this game between the Ravens and the Chiefs, because in case you missed it, the Chiefs won Sunday's game between the Chiefs and Bills in the divisional round. So, guys, I'm going to be making as many Taylor Swift song references as I possibly can throughout this, but without mentioning it. So it's your jobs to then count them up and try to guess exactly how many.
This is going to be a week. This is going to be the longest week leading up to
I'm
the
so
game
glad
of
that
the
this is
season.
not the Super Bowl. I can't imagine 2 weeks of this.
2 weeks of all of this. So just try to count them up in your head, and then I'll quiz you at the end of it. All right, so the Ravens are facing the team in red. The
There's
Chiefs will fill the blank space next to the Ravens in the AFC to try to determine who will go to the Super Bowl. Ravens, obviously, the 1 seed. Chiefs are the 3 seed. Game being played Sunday at 3 o'clock at M&T Bank Stadium. Ravens are 3-point favorites. These two teams haven't met since 2021. That was an awesome game that lived up to the hype. A barn burner, 36-35. The Ravens came back. That was at M&T Bank Stadium. And guys, let's start off with this. The number of MVPs between these two quarterbacks is 3. It's going to be 4 by the end of the season. Jonas and I were going through the last several years of MVPs, and it's going to go, what is it? Mahomes, Lamar, Rodgers, Mahomes, Lamar. Just a sheer run of dominance for these 3 quarterbacks. We're all going to have 2 MVPs in the span of 6 years. when you look at this matchup, could it get any more star-studded in terms of the quarterbacks, and especially two of the best quarterbacks in the entire AFC?
I don't know. Can we have Josh Allen come back? I'm kidding. No, I mean, I think what stands out to me about this matchup is, actually related to the Mahomes Josh Allen rivalry that has been kind of molded in the playoffs. This is Lamar's chance to kind of jump in because we know he's that regular season guy. He's going to be a 2-time MVP. He's been spectacular, and I think last week in the divisional round against the Texans was a taste of, I mean, a lot of guys take 5-6 years to kind of mature into their career. We forget that because Patrick Mahomes has been such a phenom. We forget that some guys need that runway, and I think Lamar has that runway. He's hungry. He's at the top of his game. He looked amazing on Saturday. And I think this is his chance to actually get in the debate we're talking about. We know in the regular season he's been one of the best quarterbacks, but because Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have gone head-to-head a bunch in the playoffs, that's kind of been set as the new Manning-Brady dynamic, whatever you want to call it. And I think this is Lamar Jackson's chance to really kind of vault Josh Allen and get into that real conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's been weird to kind of even now still hear people talking about the AFC pecking order for quarterbacks be Mahomes, which I have no problem with. And then in that second tier, it is Allen and Burrow because of that postseason success. And so Lamar, I think you will probably have some people, and I've already started to hear it, make the argument that if he wins this and then goes on to win the Super Bowl and dominates there too, that he would have a claim to being the best player in the world. I still think I would lean Patrick Mahomes just because of the body of work that he has over Lamar. And, you don't want to hold Lamar's injuries too much against him, but there is an ability to being available. But you're right. I mean, I think Lamar's probably sick of turning on ESPN during the offseason and not seeing his name mentioned in that top 3 of AFC quarterbacks, even though he's the only one of those guys besides Mahomes that has an MVP. He's going to have 2 now in a matter of a couple of weeks. So this could be for as much narrative shifting as we got after Saturday with that nice win. This would be a real nice boost to whatever possible arguments we have for Lamar not being in that upper tier of NFL quarterbacks, AFC quarterbacks, whatever quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I do also wonder, because the Chiefs have had so much success, and because the Mahomes has dominated in terms of the playoffs, he has yet to have a year where he's the starter and not make the AFC Championship game at the very least. He already has his 2 rings. The Chiefs, for the longest time, were kind of a moribund franchise that had not had postseason success, had not been to a Super Bowl in 50 years. They win their Super Bowl 5-6 years ago. They win another. You almost wonder if they're becoming, if America is slightly turning on this team. I think the Taylor Swift drama, which we will get to, has kind of added to it. But Mahomes has kind of turned into an anti-hero because you do see, I think, a shift in terms of how people view Mahomes. I think the regular season game against the Bills, where Mahomes had that kind of mini outburst at the referee for the offsides call, you wonder, I wonder at least, who America is going to be rooting for in this game, whether it is the Chiefs because they still have the star power and you still have the Swifties all behind them, or if America wants a change, Are they going to be rooting for the Ravens?
I think Kyle could speak to this, but just how much the notion that someone is a complainer, that someone is a whiner, can really do a number.
Why can I speak to this?
Because of your background with NBA guys who might flop and complain and bitch and moan to refs. And Lamar is not that. And Mahomes is a gamer. He's a competitor. I mean, he's played through incredible pain, but he has been a little demonstrative at times about getting certain calls. And Lamar's just like, whatever, I'll move on to the next play. And if you want to combine that with all the Taylor Swift related agita that's kind of percolated over the last year, then I do think the average Joe America fan was probably rooting for the Ravens.
Yeah, it as somebody who in this room is old enough to remember Tom Brady coming to power, this is a very Brady-esque type thing. The games eventually become referendums on, do you like the Chiefs? Do you not? Do you like Patrick Mahomes? Do you not? More so than the team that's going against them. And I think for the Ravens, that's a chance to seize the script. And I wrote a column overnight that was published this morning about this. Everything is kind of a referendum on the Chiefs. Everything is kind of a referendum. Are you a Swiftie? Are you not? And Lamar Jackson is a great player in his own right. A guy who you could argue now, if he retired tomorrow, please don't retire tomorrow, would be in the Hall of Fame. And I would like to see Lamar, the Ravens, who have arguably an all-time defense that might still be underrated, just because, great show last night, great quarterback duel last night. The Ravens haven't had a lot of those going against the best teams. They've killed the best teams.
Yeah.
And I really think looking forward to this weekend, it's going to be the defense that's the difference. But I would like to see the dialogue shift from, hey, do you like the Chiefs? Do you not like the Chiefs? I'm kind of over that.
And you do kind of get the same feeling. You mentioned the Patriots and Brady coming down the wire in these playoff games just because of how many big-time games they've won. Anytime it's a close game coming down to the wire, just get this feeling like Mahomes is going to pull this out.
Inevitable.
It feels inevitable. Like last night with the Bills, you just felt like something was going to break the Chiefs' way. And that's exactly how I used to feel watching the Brady Patriots coming down to the wire, that they were just going to be able to pull something out of their hat and win a game. But you talk about, Brady Patriots had Bill Belichick. The Chiefs, Mahomes Chiefs, have Andy Reid. Ravens still have one of the better, longest tenured coaches in the NFL in John Harbaugh, and somebody who came from that Andy Reid coaching tree. Reid, by the way, might have a better coaching tree historically than Bill Belichick, actually, if you look at the sheer number of good head coaches.
There's actually no doubt about that. The Belichick tree has always failed going from the trunk.
Yes, it is. It is a dead tree once it gets to the leaves. But Jonas, how big a storyline is the coaching matchup in this one?
It's big. Just, obviously head to head, head coach to head coach. It is significant. I'm sure we'll have nothing but pleasantries between John Harbaugh and Andy Reid, but the coordinate level is going to be fascinating too, because it is, for as much attention Mike McDonald has gotten this year for all that he's given this Ravens defense, Steve Spagnuolo, that Chiefs defensive coordinator, is incredible himself. He's the kind of guy who's going to throw curveballs at Lamar and not stop throwing them, even if the first two, hit Lamar. He's a really, really smart play caller, has done great work with that Chiefs defense. I think they finished second in the NFL in sacks, just behind the Ravens. And then obviously, the Chiefs don't really have a prototypical offensive coordinator, because it is Andy Reid's offense. And if there is someone over the past decade that you would trust to be able to find chinks in a team's armor, it would be Andy Reid. And good luck to him, because this is, as you said, a generational Ravens defense.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in it. It's funny how we think about, listen, I'm always thinking about narratives, because that's how I operate. But John Harbaugh was the mentee of Andy Reid, won a Super Bowl before Andy Reid. Now Andy Reid kind of has the mic, because he's been to 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls and won 2 of them. And I'm kind of interested. I'm always interested in legacy, in mentors and mentees, and guys who kind of take cues, and guys trying to upset the coaches who groom them. And I think with John Harbaugh, you had before this season, you might have had this impression that he was sort of in the Tomlin zone, always a great team, or always a good team, never a over the top team. And I think John Harbaugh is hungry to prove, hey, at 61 I can adapt. At 61 I can still adjust. And he's completely made over this team since that 2019 version. They operate differently on both sides of the ball. I'm really interested to see if John can take the narrative back from his mentor.
Yeah.
Do you think that the aura around the Chiefs has made, or will make, the possibility of a loss more palatable? Because it's like, oh, Patrick Mahomes is inevitable. The Chiefs are inevitable. We can't hold it against John Harbaugh to a certain extent for not breaking through.
I think so. I think anytime you have a top player, a perpetual MVP candidate, that you lose to them, it's understandable to a certain extent. It doesn't make it any less painful, but I think it's easier to swallow than if
it were the Bills.
Yeah, which is exactly why the 2019 playoff loss to the Titans was so hard to swallow, was because the Ravens were so favored, because it was very clearly an inferior opponent. It will be tough to swallow if the Ravens lose this game at home, I think, which is why I think yesterday's loss for the Bills might have been the most devastating of that quote-unquote rivalry, which it's hard to say is really a rivalry because of the Chiefs dominating that matchup. But I think that one was especially hard to swallow for Bills fans because it was at home and the Bills, in a lot of ways, had the advantage.
Yeah, and well, I think also you can't discount the competitive window the Ravens have here,
Right.
and I think that would add to the sense that hey, this is the year to knock off Mahomes. The way that Lamar's contract is being structured, having Mike McDonald with Madubuike, PQ, sort of potentially leaving for elsewhere. I think this is the time if you're Baltimore. I keep thinking of it. This is the window. And I honestly think that maybe that Texans game was sort of the emotional hump. And I'd be interested to see how the Ravens come out on Sunday, now that that initial win is off their back. But I think you really have to think of urgency when you think about how this team is going to be built in the next 4 or 5 years in the Lamar Jackson era. This is the time to do it.
In terms of personnel, too, one of the more fascinating storylines that you and I both wrote down, Kyle, the potential return of Mark Andrews and how that affects how much run time, how much playing time Isaiah Likely gets, because he has legitimately become a weapon for the Ravens. We saw that jump ball touchdown that Lamar Jackson threw to Isaiah Likely. I said on our post-game podcast, Jonas, that if and when Mark Andrews comes back, and it seems like it's trending towards him coming back for this AFC Championship game, to me, Likely has deserved a chance to still get a lot of snaps on offense.
Yeah, I think so. And it's almost like it's wild how it feels like we haven't talked about that enough. I mean, this is Lamar Jackson's favorite target in his entire career. And there were people on shows that I won't mention that said, oh, well, you have to assume that when Mark Andrews gets injured, that hurts the Ravens Super Bowl chances. And honestly, they had a point. But Isaiah Likely has filled in so seamlessly, been very athletic. Some of those amazing catch. I mean, I think of the one in Jacksonville, the catch he had, that was just an amazing display of athleticism. He does give something a little different than Mark Andrews. And, I know Jonas was sort of talking about before the season, Todd Monken trying to incorporate 2 tight end sets and having success there. It wasn't happening when both of them were healthy. So I'm interested to see if the Ravens can keep the momentum that Isaiah Likely has built up for himself.
More important to be healthy for this game, Mark Andrews or Marlon Humphrey?
Ooh, fascinating one. I think we could have had this discussion last week, and then they both end up being out for that game.
Yeah.
I mean, what's fascinating is that the Ravens have had to play without both of these guys for significant stretches, so they know how to do it. Mark Andrews hasn't played in a game since he got hurt back on November 16th, and since then, Isaiah Likely is averaging 55 receiving yards per game. And then defensively, without Marlon Humphrey, we've seen Brandon Stevens step up. We've seen Ronald Darby step up like he did against the Texans. Nico Collins, for the most part, was held in check, the Texans' top receiver. So both of these teams are used to, or both of the sides of the ball are used to having those guys out. I do wonder if Marlon Humphrey is out, though, what is going to be the plan for the Kansas City wide receivers? Not a great wide receiver group, but also what is going to be the plan against Travis Kelce? I don't know if Marlon Humphrey would have affected that plan at all. Would he have been involved at all? Or do you think that's going to be a lot of linebackers, a lot of Kyle Hamilton against Travis Kelce, regardless of whether Marlon Humphrey plays or not?
Yeah, I think it probably would have been, and still might be, a lot like the 49ers game plan where, the Chiefs line up in 21 personnel and 12 personnel, so only 2 receivers on the field, and the Ravens match with that nickel personnel. So you have Kyle Hamilton out there, but he's not maybe in the box. So it's Marlon Humphrey kind of knocking inside as your slot cornerback. And we saw against the 49ers just how important he was in the run fits, how important he was matching up, in coverage. Obviously, we should say whenever Marlon Humphrey has come back from injury, it has not gone well for him. And good luck to him if his first game back is against Patrick Mahomes. But, you always want that extra margin for error. I mean, there's nothing saying that Brandon Stevens might not blow a tire, or, Ronald Darby pulls a hammy or something like that. You want that extra health. You want that extra stability. But yeah, I mean, Marlon would be huge. I don't think they're going to match Travis Kelce with just one guy. You'd like Kyle Hamilton if it's man-to-man, but it's probably not going to be a lot of man-to-man. So, you just hope that cap is good to go.
And then, Kyle, I think you tweeted out last night when, I can't remember who was it on the broadcast that was talking about, maybe Tony Romo, talking about.
It was Tony Romo.
Talking about how the two defenses in the Chiefs and the Bills were very good at disguising.
No, that's not what he said. He said the best at disguising.
Not the two of them, the best. The best.
Tony says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think sometimes when you're in the game, you say certain things and don't really care what you say.
It's like us on the podcast.
Yeah, but yeah, he said they're the best at disguising, and I mean, I just think the Ravens have anytime they've had an opportunity to show how good they are, they've done it.
Yeah. In terms of one key player on this Ravens defense, on this Mike McDonald defense, Justin Madubuike, game wrecker all season, 13 sacks. Chiefs have a pretty good defensive tackle on the other side as well. Between Chris Jones and Justin Madubuike, I mean, who is going to stand out above the rest?
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know if I can answer that question right now. And Justin Madubuike wasn't exactly noisy in this last game against the Texans. Wasn't I would argue that
no sacks for the Ravens defensive line.
Yeah, I would argue that Clowney was the more impactful defensive lineman. And listen, if he has another great game, good for him. But yeah, I think it's a huge test for Justin to kind of step up and pressure the middle, get Patrick Mahomes out of the pocket, make him throw on the run. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is great throwing almost anywhere, but you definitely want him running for his life rather than having time in the pocket to make a choice. And then, on the other side, Chris Jones, one of those last incompletions that Josh Allen threw, he got sort of a blocker pushed into him by Chris Jones. So he's very impactful. But I think, if you're the Ravens, you're a little more hopeful because Lamar is so good at escaping and making those decisions to extend plays, finding ways to get out of the way of these big defensive linemen. Obviously, he took a couple sacks last week and had to adjust to that pressure. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge game for defensive linemen on Sunday.
Maybe he was just, I don't know, dealing with indigestion or something, but Chris Jones looked like he could not give a fart about run defending. Like in that first half, he was getting blown off the ball every single time on those early Bills drives where they were just moving the ball, running the ball every 3 or 4 plays. And, he's getting up there in age. He's still a beast, but I think Madubuike is, hashtag built for this because he is a young guy. He's an incredible athletic specimen. You wonder if the grind and the wear and tear of playing this long a season is starting to wear on someone like Chris Jones. He, obviously was strong enough to finish the game and bother Josh Allen on that crucial throw. But there were plays, especially in that first half on Sunday, where he was just looked like he did not want to be there.
It's interesting assessment. And I am curious to see, especially if the Ravens rushing attack gets better throughout the course of the game. It felt like against the Texans, they just kind of wore them down. I know a lot of that was also
they were planning. Going. I mean, and Justice Hill, shout out to Justice Hill for really getting going. Kind of after that first half, I did not expect what the Ravens pulled off, but that happened against Jacksonville, if you'll remember. Yep. There have been teams that have just been physically worn down by this line, and
supposedly good run defenses too.
And it was funny. I mean, Gianna Han was talking to Kevin Zeitler on Saturday. Said, hey, you guys had to deal with the blitz. And he's like, yeah, we did. It's like you could tell that there was an eyes wide element to that first half, but they were able to adjust. I mean, they were much better, almost a different team. So I think the Ravens, through their games this year, have given confidence that even if they get off on the wrong foot, they're a team that's capable of changing the game in the second half and being a throw-heavy team if they need to, like against the Dolphins, or being, hey, we're going to run the ball down your throat like they were against the Jaguars and Texans.
Right, and it helps to have a lead. I mean, once the Ravens took that 17-10 lead right after halftime, that gives you a little bit more leeway to run the ball, and that's why it's so critical that they're able to stop Mahomes, I think, especially early in this game, because you don't want to go down multiple scores to Patrick Mahomes, because then you're going to have to be asking Lamar Jackson to be throwing a lot and throwing his way kind of back into that game.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what the injury report looks like on Wednesday, because Chiefs took a couple knocks. Joe Thuney, I think most notably, the strength of this Chiefs line is that interior, and we've seen the Ravens at times, just because of how they play with those light boxes, been susceptible to those power runs, and the Chiefs are not afraid of running power plays up the middle. And if it is just one all-pro type guy and Creed Humphrey, and Joe Thuney is dealing with a pec injury, then, man, if I'm Patrick Mahomes, I'm already worried about how little my coach relies on a pretty good run game. And now you're talking about having to do even more with more pressure coming up the middle from Matabike and Queen and everyone blitzing. I think that's a hugely important injury, to say nothing of them losing, Willie Gay and Sanders, their safety. It looked like Rashee Rice was dealing with some rib pain late in that game as well. So, no team is healthy at this point, but the fact that the Ravens have only played one game in the playoffs and the Chiefs are dealing with two is definitely notable.
I'd also add, if you're looking at the chess match and you're Patrick Mahomes and you're anticipating pressure, what's the answer for that? Because if you're trying to run short screens and things like that behind the line, the Ravens have two of the best guys in the NFL at sniffing those out, in Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton. I mean, we saw it again on Saturday, how they were just blowing up screens. And I think that is I really think if you're the Chiefs, you're gonna be relying on, okay, Patrick Mahomes is brilliant, and that's gonna be a tough long-term prospect for them.
Yeah. One other big storyline for this game is going to be the crowd. 71,000 at M&T Bank Stadium in the freezing cold is probably going to is what we saw against the Texans. It's probably going to be warmer than that, I think, on Sunday. But they cost the Texans 4 false starts and 1 delay of game. According to the Ravens, they have forced more delay penalties, false start penalties in the regular season and the playoffs. And Patrick Mahomes, for all the playoff games he's played, has played very few playoff games away from Arrowhead Stadium. Of the 4 games he has played on the road, quote unquote, in the playoffs, 3 of those have been Super Bowls. So only 1 real road game. I know he just had to deal with Bills Mafia and snowballs being thrown at him in the freezing cold there. But he's not out of the woods yet. I mean, he's got to come to M&T Bank Stadium and go up against a fan base that he has already said publicly is one of the toughest places to play at M&T.
Yeah, I mean, when he went on the Manning cast earlier this year, he talked about how there were really only 2 places where he felt like this Chiefs offense would have to go to a silent count, which is, you're relying on the center to handle the execution of the snap. Seattle and Baltimore. And I got to tell you, I think Baltimore on Sunday will be probably louder than Baltimore in primetime in 2021 or whenever it was that the Ravens won. I mean, you're talking about giving this crowd of guys paying $400 at least a buck to get in, and a couple more hours than usual to have that liquid courage. It's going to be loud. It's going to be really, really loud.
And I also think at halftime I had some side conversations with longtime media members here. We're noting how quiet it was, a 10-10 tie. And I think I wrote about in my post-game column, there's a lot of anxiety coming from that divisional round, and a lot of people just had their stomach in knots about, okay, this can't happen again. 2019 can't happen again. I think from here on out, AFC Championship home game, it's kind of, obviously the Ravens want to win for reasons we already talked about, but it's kind of gravy, baby. I think the fans are going to be looser and a little more just ready to kind of feel the energy, feel the electricity all game long on Sunday compared to Saturday.
Yeah, you could feel the kind of ghosts of 2019. Some fans were. It just got so deathly quiet after right before that missed field goal. I'd say near the end of the first half by the Texans. It just felt like the fans were incredibly, concerned at that point in the game.
I guess the biggest concern for Sunday would be that a not insignificant portion of the Ravens fan base might be distracted by a certain someone sitting in the press box. Not a press box. I wish in the press box. In a luxury suite.
Is there a scenario in which we could share an elevator with Taylor Swift? And what would you say to Taylor Swift? What would be your elevator pitch?
Zup.
Zup? What could you possibly have to say?
Big Truz.
You think she knows about that? I tend to think she does.
I don't think she does.
I don't think so.
But the Taylor Swift of it all. Has she ever been to the city of Baltimore? I tweeted that out yesterday at Paul Mancano. Do you think she grew up in Lancaster?
Maybe in a layover?
That's what we were saying. But she flies her own. She's got her own personal plane now.
No, now she does.
Now she does. But maybe growing up she didn't.
Should we ask the Ravens? Should we pull the Ravens locker room if her private plane usage is environmentally responsible?
Yeah, let's get their thoughts on that. She has played at Merriweather before,
Yeah.
but that's Columbia.
Howard County, shout out.
Yeah, I don't think she's ever played at M&T Bank Stadium, at least that I've been able to determine.
I don't think so. But you know what? I loved so I mean I'm seeing all these tweets in my algorithm today. It's like, do you think Taylor Swift will go to Captain James, the restaurant that is themed like a boat? Be More Licks down the street from my house. You want to come to Be More Licks, Taylor?
Should we come up with a guide, like a travel guide just for Taylor?
I think it's in the works. The hardworking newsroom of the BaltimoreBanner.com is setting up a travel guide specifically for Taylor Swift, but also for others if you want to take a look at it. I think.
Yeah,
so.
Jonas, the narratives around Taylor Swift deserve their own storyline here.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a big week for people talking about Taylor Swift in the Baltimore area, and that's going to make a lot of people, a lot of men, very, very mad. And I guess I will just say, like, first of all, get over yourselves. This is like the NFL is a business. There's nothing like the reason that the Ravens didn't play in that late afternoon slot against the Dolphins. As you guys remember, that was like a game to set up who would be the number one seed in the AFC. We thought was because the Chiefs were in that spot. And there is nothing right now that juices NFL ratings like Taylor Swift. And so if you're talking about her being at a game with the possibility of like this maybe being the last time that she can see Travis Kelce in person because of this.
Because the Ravens going to end their season.
Well, not just that, but because of the Eras tour and it kicking off and, reigniting in early February, we don't know if she would. We think she'd probably make it back, stateside for the Super Bowl if the Chiefs are in it. But this could be a farewell of sorts. And
well, hot take: the Ravens should beat the Chiefs to keep Taylor and Travis together to help their relationship. That's honestly the Ravens fighting for love this weekend. I actually, wow, I wanna cry a little bit thinking about it.
I think you just found your next column, Kyle.
There we go.
Spicy.
Speaking of which,
Love columnist Kyle Goon.
Did you guys count how many Taylor Swift references?
Was it 13?
I don't know. It was a lot.
I just said 13 because of Taylor Swift.
I am honestly not a fan.
Not
I'm not against her. I don't know the work. I just don't.
You got to really study the body of work there. Grind the tape.
There's something for everyone there, Kyle.
Yeah.
Just go through a discography.
I'm just assuming that you guys are spouting lyrics at me right now, and I don't know it, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
this is all
I'm
psyops.
that person.
He doesn't know we're all.
As Justin Tucker told me back in September when the first flames of this relationship were really being fanned, she just writes songs that slap.
Yeah, and a fearless thing of him to say as well. That just about does it for our podcast here today. Kyle, thanks so much for putting up with us. You can read Kyle's work as well as Jonas's work, as well as Gianna Hahn's work, as well as my work on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe for $1 for 6 months if you haven't already. Kyle, what's your Twitter handle?
At Kyle Goon.
Sorry, the bad place handle.
Oh yeah. At Kyle Goon. So Taylor, just type in KYLEGOON, and you can get my personal recommendations for the city.
You know what's weird is she was listening to the podcast well before we knew this matchup was going to happen.
One of a longtime listener, Taylor Swift.
Long-time listener.
Yeah.
Frequent commenter. Let me tell you, she's always in the comments. At Jonas_Shaffer is Jonas's Twitter handle. I am at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Please like, review, subscribe. If you give us a good review, we will read it out here on the podcast. We'll have another episode later this week, probably this Thursday, to give a full in-depth preview of the AFC Championship game between the Ravens and the Chiefs. For Kyle Goon and Jonas Shaffer, I'm Paul Mancano. Thanks so much to everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.